Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, he got his wish. The movie Black Adam is out, but was it worth the wait? Is it a good movie? My review is coming up next. Remember to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Go into the description to get a free ebook. You can download it right there. And without further ado, let's get to it. Welcome back to Great Stories Change the World. This is the YouTube channel where an author, me, I write fantasy and science fiction. I look at some of these properties and some of these shows and movies and I analyze them. And here today we're going to do Black Adam. That's right, the new movie that just came out last weekend. I went and I saw it. And I actually like a lot of the story behind this movie because it's really easy for a star to go, hey, I want to be Superman, or I want to be this, major property or character within a certain universe. But Dwayne Johnson along the way, even though he was given a chance to play Captain Marvel or Shazam, he actually got more interested in playing Black Adam. And I'm going to talk about that for a second because I think it would have been interesting for Dwayne Johnson to be Captain Marvel, especially when they were first starting to talk about this back in like 2000 or so, because it would have been a person of color. It would have been a little different look than kind of the classic white guy that looks like me kind of thing, being Shazam. And it would have been different. It would have been interesting. And yet I think he started to gravitate towards this character of Black Adam. And there's a reason, because in the comic books, Black Adam kind of becomes an anti-hero. He's a villain in the beginning. And this is what comic books did, and they did a lot more back in the day, is that the villains would be they're just evil, right? You don't give them a whole lot of backstory, maybe a little bit. This is how they became evil, or this is how they got their powers. You kind of do some of that with the origin story for villains too. And for Black Adam, he was kind of the opposite of Shazam in the sense of, he was given these powers, but then the wizards kind of they sent him far away. I think in the comic book, that was the original idea. And then, that's how they explained that he was gone for thousands of years and now he comes back. But over time in the DC universe, they made it more complex. They made his character more complex in the comic books. So Black Adam becomes something more of this sort of hero and villain depending on how he feels. And so I think with some of that complexity that they started to put into the comic books, Dwayne Johnson was like, I think that would be really interesting. This is a person of color. He'd be more of an anti-hero. It'd be something different. And so he started to talk about that over time, but it's taken a long time. Like I said, since the year 2000, that was 22 years ago, that they started talking about making a Shazam movie and seeing if he wanted to be in it, and he was going to play the villain, right, Black Adam, and that would have been interesting. But I think over time, it got to be where The Rock is a major star. He's a bankable star, and so he wanted to make just a movie where he was the star. And it kind of went through some iterations through time. 2007 is where he really kind of honed in on being Black Adam. 2014 is when they started this whole DC shared universe. And so they had to kind of readjust where the movies were going to go and what was going to happen. And Zack Snyder was getting involved and all of that. And then in 2019, they did Shazam. And I actually liked the first Shazam movie. And they're coming out with a sequel, I think, next year. So, and that was a more popular movie. And so that kind of brings this idea of Black Adam having his own movie back into the forefront, right? And again, there was resistance back and forth. How do we make a movie about this kind of little known character? But now with streaming services and the Suicide Squad, and there's this more popular thing now where people are bringing in kind of secondary characters or characters that aren't as well known, making great movies out of them. I think Guardians of the Galaxy was the first to do that in a really successful way. You could kind of argue that Iron Man was that because, Marvel didn't have ownership of some of their biggest properties and characters at that time. So that's how they went that route at first with Iron Man, and they made it hugely successful. even though Iron Man was a little bit more of a secondary character. Getting back to Black Adam, then they decided after Shazam was popular and successful, they was like, well, let's make a Black Adam movie. And I'm saying, I'll say, is that it took time, and it even took time after 2019, because then in 2020 you had COVID, and that really messed up Hollywood. A lot of movies got pushed back, and I think Dwayne Johnson really wanted this to go into the theaters, so they pushed back some of the filming and some of the development until now in 2022. Now we have it, but it's a 22-year journey overall, from kind of idea and conversation. And just as an author and as a creative, I think it's something that we have to remember. It's really easy to get an idea and love that idea, but sometimes you have to have endurance about an idea. Like, an idea has to endure past the initial stages of, like, the honeymoon stage. Like, I really like this idea, I love this idea, and everyone loves their own ideas. But it takes a discipline and takes patience to go from the original idea and concept into a finished product. And this took 22 years. And so, just to encourage people, if you're a creative and you're watching this, as an author, I'm telling you, when you get published with a traditional publisher, sometimes it's years before you're going to see the final product. There's editing and there's marketing and there's all this sort of stuff you got to go through. And so, just to be encouraged, if you're a creative, that this was a passion project for Dwayne Johnson, and you could tell he kept talking about it, and now here it is. So let's get into the movie. So in the movie, it's kind of centered around this city called Kahndaq, and it's sort of Middle Eastern. They don't really tell where it is. It's kind of like maybe North Africa or something like that. Got some, like, the background's like an Egyptian vibe. And that's one of the things that's kind of interesting about DC, is they always come up with these new places. Marvel, they more than likely will have stuff going on in New York or Chicago. A lot of times it's New York, let's just be honest. And real places in our universe. Whereas for DC, they make up cities, right? Like Star City and Metropolis and Gotham. And here they've done that again. They've made up this city, but it's like this Middle Eastern city. And here's one thing I like, and I'll get to my likes and dislikes here in a second, but they have Intergang, who has come in and they're oppressing this city and they're looking for a hero. And we get these sort of normal characters, human characters. You have Adriana, who's like an archaeologist, professor, freedom fighter, and her son Aman, and her brother, Adriana's brother Kareem, and they get betrayed by Ishmael while they're trying to, like, find this old popular hero, this legendary hero called Teth Adam, but he becomes Black Adam by the end, obviously. And so they awaken Black Adam, or Teth Adam, and he's really powerful, and you start to get his backstory. So that's kind of the setup of the movie. All right, so let's get into my likes and dislikes when it comes to this movie, Black Adam. First of all, I like that they used Intergang. Now, Intergang doesn't become like the big bad by the end, but Intergang is a major part of the DC Comics universe. And they show up all the time, and they're this, like, international criminal organization, and they have kind of taken over this city, Kahndaq, and oppressed it and all that sort of stuff. So I dug that they brought that in. I like that they brought in the Justice Society. Now, the Justice Society is like a Justice League part, one, really. Like, that was like, the Justice Society was like the 30s and 40s. In the comics, they're like an older version of what the Justice League becomes in the modern day. And so there's some interesting characters in there. And I like Hawkman. Hawkman has always been one of my favorites from the comics. I like that they made him a person of color, and his suit was cool, and he was, good at fighting and all that sort of stuff, and his personality. I just liked his character in the movie. I liked Atom Smasher. So Atom Smasher is, again, kind of a secondary character from the comics, but he's young, and he's taken on his father's mantle, who is Fonzie. His dad is Fonzie, basically. and kind of gives him his mantle and is like, hey, it's your turn now. And he's young and he eats a lot. So he's a real fun character, but he's got a good heart. And you can really see that. So he was great. And of course you have Dr. Fate, who is a huge part of the DC Comics universe. He's kind of DC's answer to Doctor Strange in a certain sense. But he's played by Pierce Brosnan, which is an excellent choice, and he did an excellent job. Now, the other part of the Justice Society is Cyclone. And she was an interesting character, but I really wish they would have done a little bit more with her, made her stand out a little bit more. She had cool powers, and she did some cool stuff with it. But I really wish they would have kind of brought that out more. And Amanda Waller kind of shows up again, and I'll get to some of the dislikes later. So I like the Justice Society and how they come in and they kind of have to learn to work together and all of that sort of cool stuff. It's superhero movie. Like, you want to see that sort of stuff. I like the pacing. I like the pacing of the movie where, you got the fights and you got the kind of the slow times, the down times where like they process and then they go forward and how they kind of get to certain places, and the ship was cool. There's a lot of cool parts of it that I thought were great. The special effects were great. Overall, it was pretty good. And I really liked the overall arc of Black Adam's character. They never really made him a hero, but they kind of explained some things, some of his background, and they really humanized him in a lot of ways, but they made him super powerful and explained kind of who he was and why he was the way that he was, and kind of gave you a little twist there towards the end, which I appreciated. It was a little different. So those are the things that I really liked, and I dug it at the cool fight scenes, and it was epic, and they used their powers, and it was kind of creative along the way, and so I dug that. All right. Now here's my dislikes. I really wish they would have done more with the Cyclone character. Like I said, she was, again, a person of color, young woman of color, that she was just kind of there in writing sense and character sense. And so I really wish they would have done more with her. And she was nice and sweet, and they did stuff with her, but I kind of wish she could have stood out a little bit more as a character. I wasn't really sure why Amanda Waller called these guys. Like, they never really explained why they called the Justice Society to go take care of this super powerful being that all of a sudden just shows up. Like, why did they call these guys? Why didn't they call Superman in the beginning? Why didn't they call Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman? Why didn't they call the Justice League, like these really powerful heroes, to deal with this guy who was like otherworldly, super powerful, unbeatable, weapon of mass destruction sort of thing that they call him? Like, why didn't they call those guys first? I mean, so there's a couple of those moments that are sort of convoluted, and you just got to kind of accept that that's why this is happening in the movie. And it starts to get pretty predictable there towards the end. Now, I kind of like the overall arc of the story. I think it's good. But I think that they kind of got predictable. It's almost Marvel predictable there towards the end. It's like, we're just going to come up with a big bad guy who's as powerful as Black Adam, and they're going to fight, right? And Black Adam's going to kind of do his thing, and they're going to have to do their thing, and all of this stuff. So parts of it were predictable and formulaic. Again, there was a couple twists in there that I liked, and sacrifices that had to be made. So there's some good story in there. But again, it was a little sort of like, yep, I've seen this movie in, dozens of times at this point, after, the DC universe and especially the Marvel universe, right? Now, overall, I think it was a good movie. Overall, it was entertaining. I didn't leave there saying, man, I just wasted my money, because I saw it in the theater. So I can definitely recommend you watching it. Oh, another thing that I liked that they went into was, they kind of went into that there was a city called Kahndaq, and they'd been oppressed. Why haven't heroes shown up? The only time the heroes showed up was to get this Black Adam guy, or Teth Adam at the time. Like, where have they been? These are supposed to be heroes, but they're not showing up when we really need them. So we would rather have a hero that even if he's iffy, right? Even if he's kind of an anti-hero, we'd rather have this guy who's actually going to help us rather than these heroes who are supposed to be so awesome and goody two-shoes, but where have they been when this criminal organization has been controlling everything? So I dug that. I dug, it was kind of made it more complex. I like the characters. Some of the stuff that they did, again, at the end was formulaic and a little cheesy. But in the end, I really liked it. And there's a great sort of after credit scene. So if you watch it, stick around. It's pretty cool. I dug it. So, and you can probably find it online now, what it is. But that's my review. Now remember to subscribe to the channel. Remember to go get your free ebook if you're a fantasy lover, if you like great epic fantasy. Just there's a free ebook there in the description. And I will see you later. Peace out.